For decades, two names have dominated every debate about the strongest prison ever built: ADX Florence and Alcatraz. One is carved into a lonely island surrounded by icy waters. The other is engineered into the Colorado desert like a modern fortress of silence. Both represent something bigger than concrete and steel. They represent the idea of the inescapable. Today, we step into the story of two prisons built for the same purpose across two very different eras. One was sculpted by the winds of the early 20th century. The other was shaped by the fears of the modern age. And together, they form a question that millions still argue about. Which one was truly impossible to escape? This journey begins not with their walls, but with the mindset behind them. What drove the United States to create places so secure, so isolating, that escape wasn't supposed to be a possibility in the first place? What forced architects, lawmakers, and federal officials to design prisons not just to hold people, but to hold the most determined escape planners the country had ever known? To answer that, we have to examine each prison from the foundation up, and understand what their creators believed made them unbeatable. Alcatraz was born from a time when America believed danger came with roaring engines, Tommy guns, and men who ran entire cities from the shadows. It was the 1930s, an era of gangsters, bank robbers, and interstate crime sprees. And so the government decided to create a place so isolated that no one could disappear into the public again. They chose a rocky island in the middle of San Francisco Bay, a place hammered by freezing winds and unpredictable tides. Here, the idea was simple. Even if someone broke out of their cell, nature itself would finish the job. The walls were thick. The routines were strict. The windows were narrow. Every hallway was arranged with the intention of removing opportunities, not just restricting movement. It became a symbol, a warning to anyone who believed they could outrun the law. And yet, its real power wasn't in the concrete. It was in the isolation that surrounded it. In the end, Alcatraz wasn't just a prison. It was a psychological challenge, designed to make escape seem pointless before the thought even started. Decades later, a different kind of threat emerged, one rooted not in car chases or bank robberies, but in precision, planning, and the ability to operate through networks rather than street corners. And so the United States built ADX Florence, often called the most secure federal prison ever created. It wasn't surrounded by water, but by miles of high desert. It wasn't patrolled by watchtowers, but by layers of automated security and architectural traps designed to stop an escape before it could begin. ADX was designed with a different philosophy: limit movement, limit interaction, and remove every opportunity to exploit. Its creators believed that security didn't only come from walls, it came from predictability, from structure, from a layout that ensured every moment was accounted for. Where Alcatraz challenged the body with the elements of nature, ADX challenged the mind with precision and total control of the environment. This shift in design reflects how threats changed over time. It's a prison built not to intimidate, but to eliminate risk through engineering and routine. And in that routine lies its reputation. Alcatraz's greatest moment of controversy came in 1962, when 3 inmates disappeared from their cells and were never seen again. Their method became one of the most studied escape attempts in American prison history. It wasn't simply about breaking out. It was about pushing the boundaries of what people thought was possible. Their story transformed Alcatraz from a prison into a legend. But the most important part of that story is what happened afterward, a debate that still continues. Some believe the men made it across the water. Others believe the currents proved stronger than determination. What matters most is that this moment made the world question the island's reputation, forcing experts to reevaluate what inescapable truly means. Because the question wasn't whether the prison had weaknesses, it was whether the human desire to break free could overcome them. In contrast, ADX Florence has never had a confirmed escape. Not one. Its design is built around controlling every movement, every door, every transition. Even communication is limited in a way that prevents planning or coordination. There are no tunnels, no overlooked blind spots, and no environments that someone could turn into an escape route. Everything is precise. Everything is intentional. The lack of escapes isn't because no one has ever thought about trying. It's because the prison was engineered with the lessons of past eras in mind. Every historic escape, every blind spot found in other prisons, every vulnerability exposed by time, ADX was built to eliminate all of it. In many ways, it is the product of decades of trial and error across the entire correctional system. That is what gives it its reputation today. When you think of an inescapable prison, which one comes to mind? Is it the cold, windswept island of Alcatraz, surrounded by the treacherous waters of the San Francisco Bay? Or is it the modern supermax fortress, ADX Florence, engineered with such precision that escape seems not just difficult, but structurally impossible? This is the debate that captures our imagination. Myth versus modern engineering. Comparing Alcatraz and ADX Florence is like comparing two completely different philosophies of confinement. Alcatraz was all about using nature as its final weapon. The deep, cold waters and the isolation from the mainland were meant to be the ultimate deterrent. ADX Florence, however, relies on pure, calculated engineering. Its strength is built into every single corridor, every structural detail, designed for total control. But here's what they have in common. Both were built with the same intention, to hold individuals who were never meant to return to society without permission. How each prison achieved that goal reveals a huge shift in our ideas about security. Alcatraz operated on the belief that sheer toughness was enough. Solid walls, steel bars, and a rigid, military-style routine were the answer. ADX Florence, on the other hand, comes from a modern era where unpredictability is seen as the greatest danger. Every design choice is about removing opportunities long before an inmate can even think of using them. If Alcatraz was built to intimidate with its harsh environment, ADX was built to anticipate every risk before it ever becomes a threat. The idea of a truly inescapable prison is as much about psychology as it is about locks and fences. It's about belief. Alcatraz built its reputation on fear and myth, stories of the bay swallowing up escapees, and the distant city lights serving as a constant, cruel reminder of a world forever out of reach. That psychological barrier became as powerful as any physical wall. People didn't just see it as a prison. They saw it as a place where hope went to die. ADX Florence carries a different kind of psychological weight. Its design is intentionally isolating. It severely limits social interaction and restricts movement, relying on its very structure to maintain absolute order. The feeling isn't that the outside world is unreachable, but that planning an escape is impossible from the very start. Its reputation comes from the way the environment itself shapes an inmate's expectations. The message is crystal clear. This prison wasn't built with a single weakness to exploit. That certainty is what defines its identity. Alcatraz's legend truly took off long after the prison closed. Hollywood movies, books, and dramatic retellings turned it into a symbol of tension, mystery, and daring. Even today, tourists walk its corridors, trying to imagine what life was like inside those cramped cells. In contrast, ADX Florence doesn't need myths. Its story isn't about mystery. It's built on documented facts, blueprints, and an almost clinical level of control. One prison is remembered through gripping stories. The other is known for its strict, unchanging, and documented reality. This is why the debate continues. Some people value Alcatraz's dramatic history and the lingering questions it left behind. Others point to the cold, hard facts, the precision and undefeated escape record of ADX Florence. Both sides are looking at the same idea, inescapability, but seeing it through completely different lenses. One is shaped by the past, the other by the present. Let's talk about escape attempts, because they reveal so much. Alcatraz's most famous escape in 1962 showed that even the strongest structures of that era had their limits. It proved that human determination and creativity could challenge the very assumptions behind its design. This doesn't diminish the prison's reputation. It actually adds to it. The mystery of whether the escapees survived keeps us questioning and retelling the story. ADX Florence, with 0 successful escapes, reflects a mindset that learned from history. It is the result of studying past failures and designing a system that aims to eliminate them entirely. Instead of relying on external factors like water or isolation, it focuses on removing opportunities from the inside out. The mindset is preventive, not reactive, and that's a defining difference. So, which prison is truly more inescapable? If you ask 10 people, you'll likely get 10 different answers. For some, the fact that no one has ever officially escaped ADX Florence makes it the clear winner. For others, a prison's legend matters just as much as its record, and the unresolved mystery of Alcatraz still challenges its reputation decades later. The real reason this debate will never die is that both prisons represent different eras of justice and security. Comparing them is like comparing two chapters of the same story. Alcatraz was built for a world of visible dangers and physical force. ADX Florence was created for a modern world defined by structure, data, and predictability. Together, they tell a fascinating story about the evolution of control and the enduring human quest to create the perfectly inescapable place. Every prison is influenced not just by the people inside, but also by the world surrounding it. Alcatraz famously used the brutal force of nature as its primary defense. The cold, unpredictable waters of the San Francisco Bay were as much a barrier as any concrete wall. Even if an inmate managed to break out of the prison itself, they still had to face treacherous currents that could drag them in multiple directions at once. The island's fearsome reputation grew from this untamable force. Nature became its final, most ruthless guard. ADX Florence, on the other hand, took a completely different approach. Instead of relying on natural obstacles, it uses engineered containment. It's located in a remote high desert that is quiet, dry, and wide open. There are no currents, no waves, no fog to hide in, only a vast, empty landscape that offers no cover and no advantage to anyone attempting to flee. The sheer distance to the nearest populated areas adds another layer of profound separation. So, while Alcatraz challenged the body with the raw power of nature, ADX challenges the mind and the very concept of planning, removing every environmental factor that could possibly be exploited. This fundamental difference reveals how security strategies evolved over time, trading nature's unpredictability for human-made precision. Now let's go inside the walls, where daily routines define the very nature of confinement. At Alcatraz, operations were built on strict schedules, timed movements, and the unshakable belief that rigid order prevents chaos. Inmates moved in groups, followed structured rules, and lived under constant, close supervision. The routines were tight, but they still relied heavily on manpower, human observation, and the disciplinary standards of the era. It was about managing groups of people through repetitive, predictable actions. ADX Florence operates with a far more controlled and granular structure. Its routines are designed around extreme limitation of movement and near-total isolation, not group coordination. Time, space, and even the briefest transitions from one area to another are calculated in a way that removes any opportunity for inmates to coordinate, communicate, or plan. The daily patterns aren't just meant to maintain order, they are security mechanisms themselves. Every minute is accounted for, and every movement is engineered to minimize risk. This reflects how modern correctional design shifted from simply regulating variables to eliminating them entirely. This shift was driven by one major factor: technology. Alcatraz was built at a time when technology had very real limits. Its strength came from its imposing physical structure and the geographic isolation of the island. Locks were purely mechanical, surveillance was based on human eyes looking through binoculars, and communication was controlled through written rules and verbal commands, not complex systems. The prison relied on architectural dominance and brute force rather than advanced tools. ADX Florence represents the complete opposite end of that spectrum. Its security is deeply and inextricably connected to modern technology, a web of systems that monitor, control, and track movement with microscopic precision. The true strength of ADX doesn't come from watching for escape attempts. It comes from ensuring that the opportunities to even consider an escape never appear in the first place. Technology acts as an invisible, omnipresent wall, reinforcing the physical barriers. This modern approach creates a form of security that doesn't depend on the surrounding terrain or large numbers of staff. It depends entirely on design and automation. This is a major reason the prison maintains its reputation as one of the most secure in the world. So, with all these differences, why does the public see them so differently? Alcatraz remains one of the most famous prisons on Earth largely because of the powerful images people conjure when they hear its name. Stories of misty mornings over the bay, lonely cells, and daring, dramatic escape attempts have turned it into a cultural symbol of resilience, mystery, and danger. Even though the prison closed decades ago, the public's fascination has never faded. It became more than a prison. It became a legend, preserved and amplified through storytelling. ADX Florence does not rely on legend. Its reputation is rooted in documented facts, strict protocols, and a perfect operational record that speaks for itself. Instead of being remembered through stories of daring escapes, it is known for the complete and total absence of them. And that very absence creates a different kind of mystique, one built not on drama but on cold, hard certainty. Where Alcatraz sparks the imagination, ADX inspires analysis. This contrast is part of what makes the comparison between the two prisons so compelling and the debate so enduring. And that brings us to the question the world still asks: which prison is truly inescapable? People continue to debate this because both represent the absolute pinnacle of security in their respective eras. Alcatraz symbolizes a time when isolation and natural barriers were considered the strongest possible defenses. ADX Florence symbolizes a time when precision, control, and psychological design became the new standard. Both prisons aimed for the exact same result but used entirely different philosophies to get there. And that is why the question remains unresolved. Some will argue that the mysterious disappearance of Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers from Alcatraz challenges its reputation, suggesting a flaw in its design. Others will argue that the perfect, unbroken record of ADX Florence proves its clear superiority. But the debate isn't just about walls or routines. It is about the evolution of what the word inescapable truly means. Understanding that evolution helps reveal how both of these institutions shape the way we think about security and confinement. Ultimately, even when comparing two of the most secure prisons in history, one truth always remains: buildings don't create legends, people do. The staff, the administrators, the individuals confined inside, and even the visitors who walk their corridors all contributed to the identity of these places. Alcatraz became unforgettable because of the human stories tied to it, the rumors whispered across decades, and the unanswered questions that captured the world's imagination. Its strength was shaped not only by its structure but by the personalities and histories that lived within its walls. ADX Florence presents a different kind of human story. Its very structure limits interactions, reduces communication, and creates an environment shaped by sterile routine rather than human tension. The individuals inside become part of a system where predictability replaces unpredictability. It's a place where the design itself controls the atmosphere, reducing the chance for the dramatic, human moments that feed legends. Where Alcatraz grew into a myth, ADX solidified into a fact-driven institution. As time moved forward, the focus of prison design changed from grand, dramatic isolation to detailed, scientific engineering. This shift from relying on nature to relying on engineering marks one of the biggest differences between the two. The evolution of these ideas shows how our entire understanding of security has been transformed. The conversation moved away from the theatrics of attempting to flee and into the cold precision of preventing the very possibility. There's one final layer to this: public memory versus modern function. Alcatraz lives on in public memory precisely because it's no longer functioning. It has become a preserved piece of history, open for tours and documentaries, allowing people to experience the echo of a past era. It's frozen in time, which helps keep its legend alive. ADX Florence, meanwhile, is a working institution. Its story is still being written, shaped by policies and operations that continue to evolve. Because it functions in the present, its reputation is grounded in what it does today, not what it once did. So, let's look at the weight of a perfect record. One of the strongest arguments in this debate centers on ADX Florence's flawless escape record. But is the absence of escape attempts proof of a perfect design? Or is it simply the result of modern methods that prevent opportunities from ever appearing? Alcatraz's story, on the other hand, is shaped by its imperfections. The tiny possibility that someone might have outsmarted both the prison and the bay is what keeps its legend burning. The unknowns add intrigue. ADX's certainty builds credibility. So, to understand which prison is truly inescapable, you have to look at all the layers: the physical structure, the environment, the routines, the technology, and the power of public perception. Alcatraz dominates the imagination, making us question what is humanly possible. ADX Florence dominates the data, leaving little room for doubt in its design. One challenges the mind with mystery, the other challenges logic with precision. When engineers designed ADX Florence, they had one prison in mind: Alcatraz. They studied every vulnerability, every escape attempt, every weakness the rock ever had. In a way, Alcatraz became the blueprint for its own successor, leaving a legacy far beyond its concrete walls. This connection reveals a simple truth: we evolve by learning from the past. ADX embodies this influence, with design choices rooted in prevention, not just reaction. This isn't just a comparison, it's a generational dialogue. Alcatraz is a symbol of the past, a time of rising federal power, bold gangsters, and the belief that nature itself was the ultimate barrier. It reflects an era where danger felt physical and immediate. ADX Florence is a symbol of the present. It stands for precision, modern threat assessment, and the idea that total control is achieved by eliminating opportunities before they even appear. Its strength is intellectual, not environmental. These symbols reveal what each era feared most. Alcatraz's isolation mirrored a fear of bold, physical escapes. ADX's control reflects our modern fear of planning, communication, and hidden networks. This brings us to the core question: if Alcatraz reopened today, with its original 1930s structure, would it still be seen as inescapable? And if ADX Florence existed back then, would people have viewed it with the same awe? The truth is, Inescapable isn't a fixed state. It changes with time, technology, and belief. Comparing these two prisons isn't about naming a winner. It's about understanding the evolution of confinement. Alcatraz challenges the imagination. ADX challenges logic. One tests human ingenuity through legend, the other through precision. Of course, every system has its limits. Alcatraz's was the unpredictability of nature. The very waters that kept prisoners in were a force no one could fully control. This unpredictability left a tiny room for possibility, and possibility is the first ingredient for any escape. ADX Florence has different limitations. Its strength depends on flawless precision and technology, which require constant maintenance and updates. Perfection is a moving target. This doesn't weaken its reputation. It just highlights that modern security relies on constant vigilance. Ultimately, these prisons carry different legacies. Alcatraz's legacy is one of mystery and myth, shaped by unanswered questions. When you look at the rock, you see a narrative. ADX Florence's legacy is built on data, design, and consistency. Its reputation was built not by spectacular moments, but by the total absence of them. Its story is told through its structure, not legends. At their core, these prisons reflect the societies that built them. Alcatraz mirrors a time of dramatic figures and a belief in physical solutions. ADX reflects our modern desire for predictable order and control. The debate isn't just about which prison is harder to escape, it's about how each era viewed risk and security. So, which is truly inescapable? The answer isn't simple. Alcatraz tests the limits of human daring against nature. ADX Florence eliminates the very possibility of escape through engineering. Each represents the pinnacle of security for its time. Perhaps the real lesson isn't about declaring a winner, but about understanding how our fears and innovations shape the world we build. The debate continues because it's a story about us, our ingenuity, our fears, and our endless fascination with measuring the impossible. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the world of maximum security, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this.